Welcome to the Rangehood installation. The first thing we want to do, no matter if it's a range hood or over the range microwave, is we always want to go cut off the power to this cooktop or to this range. That is the most important thing and one of the first things you want to go do when you get to the house. Because if you don't, you're going to forget to do it, turn these burners on, and melt your blanket to the cooktop, which is super hard to get off. And even if we do get it off, more than likely you're going to scratch the surface as you're getting it off, and we're going to have to end up replacing the cooktop anyways. So never ever skip this step. Put it in your routine to be one of the first things that you do. So now that we got the power off to our cooktop, we can get our mats out. We already got our mats on the floor, and we can cover our countertop as well. Always got to have our countertop covered. One, it's going to protect the countertop, and two, it's going to catch anything in it, making it clean up a lot easier as well. So now that we got it cleaned up, we want to do our pre-assessment, take a look at everything, check out our new range hood, make sure everything's with it, make sure there's no damage to it, and that we're good to go to proceed with the installation. So we got our power going down through, we got our electrical hookup, our new one's not damaged, so we are good to proceed forward. Now the first thing I want to do is take my electrical box cover off, which is going to be in this right hand side. Once I get my cover off and have it exposed, then I can check my wire connections. So our connections are going to be up here in the right hand corner. So we're going to need to take our wire caps off. And our ground wire is underneath the screw. But before we do that, we're going to want to test our line just to make sure that we cut the power off and that it is off. So always test it to our black wire, our hot wire. It's reading that the power's off, so we are good to disconnect it. So, got our caps off. Now I'm going to loosen up my ground screw. Got my ground line out. Next, I want to get my electrical connector nut off to free up the line. I got my line unsecured. My next step is to unmount it and bring it down. So there's going to be 4 screws in the 4 corners that we're going to have to unscrew to get this down. Now while I'm doing this, I want to support the middle of this, that way it don't come falling down. So I'm right-handed, I always start on my left and then work my way to the right. Either way, it don't matter. Got my arm under here to hold it up. to get my new one and get ready to install it. Alright, so with our new range hood, there's a couple things we're going to have to do to get it ready. One, there is attachments for our ductwork that go on top here. So depending where our ductwork is, it's either going to be going up through the top of the cabinet, going through the back wall here, or there could also be no ductwork. And if there's no ductwork, that means it's going to be front circulated. So our attachments we're going to have to put on depending where that is. So our one going up, the ductwork is going up, we have a circular duct attachment. And as well, we also have the smaller rectangular one. Now this one can go on top, but this one also goes on the back if it's vented out the back as well. So depending on what setup we have, we're going to have to place it in the correct position. But it always goes to where the ductwork is going. And if we don't have any ductwork, like in this case, then we're not going to need to use one of those attachments. But if we do, the top here is pre-perforated. And we're going to have to punch out these perforated punch outs for our ductwork. So once we get our attachments on, the second thing is we got a hole here on the top, and we also got one in the back. It's always on this right-hand side. That's going to be for our electrical connection. So depending where our connection is, that's where we want to open up. So our connection is either going to be coming through the back wall here, or it could be coming down from the top. In this case, it's coming down through the top. So, since it's coming down through the top, we got our punch out that we punched out here on the top. We also got one in the back as well if we need to punch it out in the back. So depending where it is, that's where we're going to punch it out. So we got our top hole punched out for our electrical line. The next thing we want to do is we want to open up our electrical box. Get our cover off and get our wires open. So now I got my cover off, I got my nut for my connector, I got my wire caps and my screw. I got them just set to the side. So that's our first step. Our second step, we have our grease trap that's right here. Our grease trap we're going to have to put on, and then as well we have our light. So in this case, there's a slot for our light. Some models, depending on the model, they may have two lights on it. They may be a regular light bulb, or they could be a LED light bulb. The LED light bulbs are normally sit flush to the range hood, so they normally come with a little suction cup to be able to take those lights out. But in this case, we just have this cover, which we are just going to pop it, push it over, and pop it out. That's going to allow us to put our light bulb in. Once we get our light bulb in, we can put our cover back on. So we got our grease trap, our light, our electrical's open and good to go. So now we are pretty much ready to mount it. So when we're mounting it, we want to be able to screw into the sides of the cabinets here. Sometimes we may not be able to. In the case that we may not be able to, is because it's not going to line up. We want to make sure it lines up to this outside lip of the cabinet, so that way it gives us something to screw into. Just screwing into that cabinet floor is less than 1/2 inch, and that's not going to give us enough to support the weight of that for long term. So in this case, it doesn't line up with our holes. So what we did here was we just measured and cut 2 little boards and screwed the boards up. I put 2 screws in the bottom and 2 screws from the top, securing it in and pulling it up to the cabinet floor. This is the easiest way to go about it if it doesn't line up with your outside edge. It's just giving us, we're just putting that board up there and giving ourselves a little extra room to screw into. So, now that we got some extra room to screw into, we are ready to mount our range hood. So, we got our 4 holes in our 4 corners. So, we can either measure, mark our holes up there, put our screws in, not all the way, just screw it till it's just in the wood. Then we could raise the range hood up where our bigger hole is, our bigger holes, and then we could slide it back, holding it in place so we could finish screwing it up. Personally, I don't like that way, so I'm just going to hold it up there and mount it. That's the easiest way for me. So, I got my screws to mount my range hood. So I am ready to mount it. So first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to hold and slide my electrical connection through our top hole that we punched out. It doesn't have to fit in there all the way perfect, but as long as it's down through that hole, we can pull it down through after we get it mounted up there to be able to get our nut on. So, get our screws ready. We got our screws ready. We got our drill ready. Now we are good to mount it. So, I'm going to hold it up there so that way I can get my screws on. Now you want to make sure we're holding it up against that, all the way against that back wall when we're doing it. So, push my electrical line down through. Now I can grab it from the bottom side. And now I can hold it up. Now I got it held up. Now I can get my screws in my 4 corners. Once the back gets up, the front's going to be easier to put up. But I normally hold it in the middle with my arm, so that way my arm supports the middle of it. Makes it a lot easier doing it that way. For me at least. So, I'm going to hold it up here. That way I can get my first screw in. I got it against that back wall. Alright, I got one in. Now I can get my front. Now I can work on my other side. we got it up. It's nice and sturdy. And we are going to be good to make our electrical connections. So, we have our 2 wire caps, our nut. So I'm going to want to pull my line down through, hold it down, so that way I can get my nut on. Got my nut screwed all the way up on. Now I'm good to put my wire caps on and get my ground under my ground screw. So I got my ground screw to tighten up now that I got my line under it. And I always wrap a little hook around it anytime it's under a screw. Alright, so I got my ground up. We got our white, our neutral. So we're going to go white to white. Tighten it on, give my wires a little tug, make sure it's a good connection. Now I got my black, my hot. Now there's 2 black wires on this one. I got my 2 lines combined. 1 wire is for the light, 1 wire is for the fan. So I'm going to connect all 3 of these. Give a nice little tug. Seams tight. Now I can get my electrical cover back on. Alright, make sure my wires are all secured inside the box. And I can tighten my screw back on. Oh. Alright. Now I got my electrical cover on. We already got our light in, our grease trap in. Now the only thing left to do is turn the power back on. Now we only turn the power back on to our Rangehood line. We don't want to turn the cooktop power back on yet. Now we got it on, we want to test it out. The fan's working. And our light is working. So we are testing and good to go. Now we can clean up, get some final inspection photos, and then grab the customer, let them take a look. Make sure while we're cleaning up, we wipe off any handprints we get on the range hood. We always want to make sure that we wipe it off nice and clean. Once we wipe everything off, get it cleaned up, get our blanket put away, then we can turn the power to the cooktop back on. After our survey, we're good to go.